Today I am fixing up the second white cabinet that came with the house from 1909. Take note at the look of the inside of the cabinet and also look at the color of paint on the outside, that brown color. So what I had to do first is take everything out of the cupboard, and my lovely husband is here helping me. You can see underneath all of these shelves are pretty dirty. And what I did just there is that my family house is kind of hot because my parents like it warm. And so I was covering up the vent because I was really, really hot. Now some of the liners I'm throwing away, like that one. But on the top, there was a liner that was hiding an old newspaper sheet. So we're keeping that because there's a really cool image of a lady and some information. So we're keeping that because I love old newspapers. Now this cabinet is usually used for keeping all of our baking goods. So we have sugar and brown sugar, and also we have oils and vinegar. Now, the interesting thing about the hinges is that they're very easy to take off for the, taking off the door, but the hinges themselves, oh my goodness. They were all the, not flathead, what's it called? Straight standard screws with a one little line. I much prefer the Phillips, which is the X, or the square ones. And the reason for that is because it literally took an hour to get all the hinges off the wood because they are old and not put in properly and painted over. So if you can, don't use those. Don't torture people. Now there are 4 doors on this cabinet. The one you see at the very bottom, it just kind of goes up and down towards you. This is the top one. You can see how dirty it is. Things have spilled over time. And then the next one is the 3rd door. And then on the other side, on the right, which you don't see yet, that is the 4th door. Now here is the image of the old newspaper. So I'm going to be painting around that. So I first used the electric screwdriver, and oh my goodness. I did this for about a half an hour, and then you'll see my husband trying to help me out because you have to not only unscrew it, but you have to kind of take the screw out, like the hinge out with it, because the wood behind it is kind of, I would say, dead, so it doesn't catch on to anything. It's horrible. Then the bottom door, the very bottom one, it had 4-inch nails holding it there. I know. There were so many things in this house that when I was taking it apart, I was thinking to myself, why are they using such huge nails? Well, one reason I think is because back in the day, they didn't have electric screwdrivers, right? So they used nails, and I guess the person who put this together thought having 4-inch nails to keep wood on was a good idea. Also, you can see here I'm struggling because every time I change the screw, not all of the screws fit perfectly in that screwdriver, so I have to get a set of pliers and pull that out. It's like all the things that are annoying. Do take note of the different colors in the back of the door. So you can kind of see here, there's yellow, there's the white, there's the brown trim. It just looks, in my opinion, pretty ugly. Now, the latches, we always reuse them, but one of them did break. If you can see on the right-hand side that those big nails, those were the nails that were holding on the bottom hinges. That right below in the comment section. Have you ever done something like this with an old home? Now, the old knobs that my mother chose for these years ago, I am keeping. They're porcelain knobs, and so I can use them for other furniture that I flip in the future. Once again, you can see this door what is that horrible discoloration? It looks yellow and white, and the bottom isn't painted very well. It just looks horrible in my opinion. So now I'm going back between a hand screwdriver and the electric ones to see which ones are easier. So also, if you paint something, please don't paint over the screws. People like me start crying because we have to spend so many hours trying to, get that out of there. Now, another thing you're going to be seeing is I'm putting all of the screws and the hinges into a little pot. When you see the pot, it's right there. It comes with a top. I will ask you, when you see the whole thing together, how much you thought I bought it for at a used item shop. So I went to Goodwill here in town, and I thought it would be really inexpensive, and I thought it was kind of expensive. So anyway, you should really use a pot that you only use for removing paint, because you don't want to really cook with the pans that you're using to clean all this stuff up. I don't think there's lead in this paint, but there could be in the white. The brown, 40 years ago, I don't think there was lead back then. But anyway, you always should do a sample if you are concerned with that. But that's why I use a different pot. So if there is lead or anything that's not good in the paint, it only goes onto other hinges. So now I'm trying to use the pliers to get the screws out. And then with these hinges, oh my gosh, yesterday I put on the last, not hinge, the little fastener to keep the doors closed. And my husband and I spent probably, I'd say, an hour trying to make it fit. And then he said there was one that was like the previous one on another door. So he went upstairs to take a nap because he was tired of this. So I took off the other fastener on the other door, put it on the door that wouldn't work, and then it was a lot easier for the one that I stole it from to use the new one that we bought anyway. And that's why I realize people love IKEA, because everything is just put A and B and screw and it works usually. So, oh my. Okay, so here's me using the little pot. I'm putting water, boiling water, and baking soda. I wait for 15 minutes, and then, that's 15, and then the paint magically is off. I've never tried it without the baking soda, but it works with the baking soda. I don't have vinegar. It's just water and baking soda. Okay, so how much did I pay for this pot and the little top I put on it? Now, you'll see that I am stirring with a chopstick, and that's because it's wood or bamboo, and that way it doesn't hurt the heat doesn't come to my fingers. Okay, so how much was this pot? Used place. How much? $7. That's expensive. My husband now is taking all of the paint off of the doors while I am boiling the hinges. So it's very nice to have someone to help me with my projects. They get done a lot faster. Okay, so here's what it looked like before. And then I did a 80 grit sandpaper with my Surf Prep sander. And I also sanded all of the back of the cabinets. And I also sanded the shelves. Now there were some areas, once I painted it first, and then there were some stains that came through. Now, because I love watching YouTube videos, a lot of furniture flippers say they paint first and then they wait to see when it dries if any of the tannins or discoloration is coming out. What a great idea. So once I painted it white, there were some major stains that were coming out. So I used Zinsser Bin 1, 2, 3 coat, whatever it's called, and I sprayed only the areas that had the discoloration coming out. And oh, Then I painted it again, and it was perfect. Oh, so pleased. So very pleased. I love YouTube. Now I'm also painting the outside of the cabinet, of course, and I do 2 coats on the outside and the inside. I am whitewashing the outside of the doors. I am painting the inside of the doors this white paint. And the white paint was actually used for paint for our living room and dining room ceiling when we redid the ceilings last summer. So I went downstairs in my paint collection to see what we had in white, and I thought to myself, oh, lovely. So I used it up. Not used it up, there's still a lot left, but I didn't have to spend any more money on the paint. And you can see there is a gap between the wood and the wall, and there is insulation there. I took off a 2-inch molding area piece, and it didn't fit anymore because we put in a very high baseboard. So then I got another piece of molding from the garage, painted it white, and I put it in there later on. So now you can't even tell there's a gap, which looks really nice. I don't think that this has ever been painted since 1909. And I really didn't realize how kind of gross it looked until I started painting it. Now I also used white caulk in this. It's an adhesive and kind of like it's an adhesive. And I use that for all of the let's see, how can you explain it? Like the where the shelf meets the wall, or if there were any cracks. And after it all dries, you can paint right over it, and then it looks a lot more seamless. It looks really great. So if you like to make things look a little bit better, using white caulk to fill in any holes, it's great. I love it. And I am kind of going down in painting, so I didn't do one side, then the other side. I started from the top and just worked my way down. There's probably about 4 feet between this cabinet and the cabinet behind me. So once I'm down on the ground, it's easier just to stay there and finish painting instead of having to go up and down and up and down. Now, I don't have a lot of time at the end of the video to talk about it, but at the end of the video, you'll see that I chose square knobs for all of the new kitchen drawers and doors. Oh, if I could have done it again, I would not get squares. And the reason for that is, number one, when you put them in, you should hold the square where you want it and then use the drill to fasten it. When you use a circular one, you can twist the doorknob itself. Well, if you do that with a square knob, then you can see the mark it's making. That's the number one thing. Number two is that at different angles, the knobs look like they're not horizontal to each other, right? They look a little bit off. So if you're kind of OCD or you like things to look precise, do not get square knobs. I do like them, but if you said, oh, Paula, we'll give you new ones that look the same, that are circular, yeah, I probably would do that. So here's the second coat that I'm doing. Another thing that was very surprising is that the person who built this, I don't know who it was, they used a lot of different pieces of wood to kind of like fasten things together. Like here, there's that big gap right there you can see in between, like the big dark hole. Why is there a gap? Then on the left-hand side where the trim was, there's like 2 pieces or 3 pieces put together to make it look like it's solid. Why? And then between the second to the last shelf and the very last shelf, there's 2 shelves that like have like a half an inch between each other. Why? So, it's interesting. Nowadays, there's good workmanship and there's bad workmanship. Back in the day, I'm pretty sure it was the same thing, because it's very confusing to me why it wasn't just a solid piece of wood. You can see right there. It's another connecting one, and then the piece on top is bigger. I don't know. It's very bizarre. Now, you might see also there's paint difference on the left-hand side, and then next to the cupboard, it's a little bit more yellow. That's where I removed the molding part, which I do replace. So I did repaint this wall, and then I put the white molding on top of it so it looks better. Now, the surrounds for the windows, eventually I think I'm going to replace the windows because the wind comes right through, basically. So when that happens, then I'll fix the window frames and trim work. Okay, so that's the big. So now here is the second coat. Looks pretty good in my opinion. Wow, so much cleaner, don't you? Oh, so nice. On the very top one, there's that little blue looking thing to cover up the newspaper, which I want to keep. Okay, now I used Dixie Belle Gator Hide, and you have to mix this. What I do is I usually mix it with a little piece of wood, and then I dip the blue sponge right into the container. It fits perfectly. And then when I want to have a tiny little break, I can just put the blue sponge into the top, like the black top, and that way it doesn't get on anything. And I found this to be so easy to use. It does not bubble up. And when I use this for my other cabinet, I did the exact same thing. Once it's dry, when you put the plates on the shelf and you take it off, there's no sound. Like if you've ever painted a shelf and then you put plates on it, it makes that kind of like sound, like, or something like that. This is quiet. It's like removing a plate from glass. So I highly recommend using this product for shelves that you are going to be putting plates on and off or glassware on it. It just works like a charm. I also use it on the outside of this because it's going to get a lot of wear and tear. People might hit it or something like that. So I did use gator hide for the outside and for the shelving unit on this side. Now for the doors, I did not show that I used Dixie Belle's white wax to wax it. And I also used a little bit of Fusion's liming wax. So I used that on the outside. It does take about 30 days to cure. So you have to make sure you use the knobs when you open up and close the doors. It is a little bit tacky for a while, but this gator hide dries so fast. I just love it. So you can see here's how you put it in. Then, I put the little lid right there so it doesn't drip. And I move it over. Oh, it's so nice. Now the first time I did this, I did have a little bit of drips. So all you have to do is get like 120 grit, very gently sand the drips off, and then put the second coat on. Oh, I can't say enough about it. And I am not affiliated with them at all, but I really like the way it turned out. And I did do a little bit of gator hide on this wall because this is where my mom puts the fly swatter and a duster and a very large measuring a ruler. So this is what it is, gator hide. Okay, my husband is still removing paint. And we like to use a heat gun instead of stripper because when you use a heat gun, all of the paint becomes hard, and so it's so easy to clean up. So here's one side. which has no more paint on it. He did a really good job. After he removes the paint, he then sands it with our Serve Prep sander, which I still love. And I'm going outside. This is the same paint that I used to paint the cupboard. And I just add some water to it to make it a little bit more watery. Mix it up. And I start out with no gloves, but as it progresses, I put the gloves on, because if you don't, your hands will get all white, or get paint all over it. So I make sure all the dust is off. And then all you have to do is put on the paint in the direction of the wood grain. And then get an old rag. This is an old towel. It's not even very soft. It's just an old used towel that got too stained. And then you just take off the extra paint. And then that way you can see the wood grain so much nicer. And if you don't like it, you can put more of the paint color on. But if you want to see the grain really nicely and you just want it to look lighter, I think whitewashing is lovely. So here are my dad's extra large gloves, which are so easy to put on. And the nice thing about the white waxes is that there are some places that when all of this dries, you can kind of see like maybe little holes or little places where the wood has been connected that it's not solid looking. So you just put the white wax right there, like rub it in, and then magically it looks like it's all uniform. It really helps out a lot with imperfections, doing the white wax. You also have to think about the sides of the doors. Do you want to white wax them, or do you want to paint them? So, for example, when you open up the door, do you want it to be a darker color, or do you want it to be the same as the whitewash? Now, later on, I'm going to be whitewashing our upper cabinets in the house. I am not going to be painting the back of the doors, but I will be whitewashing the edges where you don't see so much when the door is closed, but when it's open, you can see it. So you have to think about, what do you want that to look like? So here it is, I'm whitewashing the sides. Okay, now that's all dry, so I'm going to move that and get the new one and do the exact same thing as my husband is removing the paint. I believe he is using a respirator, but the two doors are open, and for me, I can't smell so much of it. But if you are using a heat gun, kind of think about what kind of fumes are coming off, and I think you should be wearing a respirator. Once again, stripping, using stripper is very stinky, most of them, and they don't work as well as they used to because they had to change their ingredients because they were highly carcinogenic. So that's the reason why they don't work the way as they used to. So heat guns, look into them. I think that's very satisfying. And it's very, very easy to clean up. So our number one thing is to use heat guns. Then number two is to do sanding. Maybe if you have some very small detail work, you have to use some stripper. And there are lots of videos from different flippers that talk about the different strippers. But make sure they're relatively recent, because strippers back in the day used to work really well, and now they don't work very well. So you can see that using just any kind of paint and adding water, if it's a water-based paint, look how nice that looks. I think it looks really nice. And then I put the third one on. We're still having to put the fourth door on. And for the fourth door, I'm using this one, the Fusion paint. Not paints, top coats. It's supposed to make sure that the white doesn't turn yellow. And I made my own little container for it. And this was a sample. You can buy samples online. I believe they're from Canada. I really like this company. It's a little more expensive, but I really like their products a lot. You can kind of see the different, like it looks a little bit glossier, just a tad bit when you put the top coat on. But then again, my paint was matte, so I like it with the top coat anyway better. I made sure that I got the edges very well because this will help, getting so it won't get hurt, basically. It helps protect the paint. And to clean these sponges, all you have to do is put them in water, and it cleans it right up. So here are my square knobs. It's all pretty and cleaned up. I hope you like it. Any comments in the comment area is always appreciated. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. It helps a lot. Have a super great day. Bye-bye.